Mrs. Jones.
The richness is in your heart. So when I met Blanche, I feel as though I am richer than any man in the world. I'm a good man.
What was the terrible secret Billy Paul carried until his death? Why did the famous singer, known for Me and Mrs. Jones, keep this hidden for so long? Did it have anything to do with his career, family, or health? How did this secret affect his life and those around him?
We got a thing going.
What can we learn from the truth he never shared? Let's explore the mystery behind Billy Paul's secret.
We got a thing going.
Billy Paul grew up in North Philadelphia, where his love for music started early. His mom had a big record collection, playing everything from jazz to smooth singers like Nat King Cole. Little Billy listened closely, singing along and trying to sound like the stars. He admired singers with smooth, silky voices like Dinah Washington, Sarah Vaughan, and Ella Fitzgerald. He also loved Nina Simone and Sam Cooke, but Jesse Belvin, known as Mr. Easy, was one of his biggest inspirations. Billy's high voice made him unique, and he often looked up to female jazz singers like Billie Holiday and Nina Simone. He felt they used their voices in special ways that male singers couldn't match. Billie Holiday, in particular, left a big mark on him. Billy's music journey began young. At just 11 years old, he sang on a local radio station. Later, he trained at the West Philadelphia Music School and the Granoff School of Music. His mom pushed him to learn proper singing techniques, helping him hold and deliver notes with confidence. Billy said he always wanted to sound like himself, not copy anyone else.
Holding hands.
When he was 16, Billy performed at Club Harlem in Philly. He got to share the stage with the legendary jazz musician Charlie Parker. Charlie gave him advice that stuck: keep working hard, and success will come. Billy's career grew as he performed at clubs and college campuses across the country. To avoid confusion with other artists named Paul Williams, he changed his stage name to Billy Paul, a name suggested by his manager. That name became legendary, just like his silky, mellow voice. Now Billy Paul was flying high after his hit song Me and Mrs. Jones took over the charts. It was a smooth, romantic tune that everyone loved. But when it came time to release his next single, things didn't go as planned. His song, Am I Black Enough for You, caused a lot of controversy. It didn't match the success of Me and Mrs. Jones, and many wondered why his team made such a bold choice.
Am I black enough for you? Am I black enough for you?
The song had a powerful message about Black pride and empowerment, but this wasn't what fans of his first hit were expecting. Mainstream radio stations didn't want to play it because they felt the message was too political. People who loved Me and Mrs. Jones were looking for something similar, not a song that made them think deeply about social issues. In a 1977 interview, Billy Paul shared his frustration. He said he was against releasing Am I Black Enough for You as the follow-up to his big hit. He felt the timing was all wrong. Fans were still enjoying the romantic vibe of Me and Mrs. Jones, and this new song was a sharp turn. Paul said, people weren't ready for that kind of song. He believed that if another, less provocative track had been released instead, his career might have gone even further. He even thought he could have reached the same level of fame as Michael Jackson if the choice had been different. Even years later, Billy still reflected on the controversy. He admitted he was angry for a long time because the decision hurt his career. But over time, he began to see the song differently. He called it ahead of its time and felt proud of its message. The song's co-writer and producer, Kenny Gamble, believed it was a great track and praised Billy Paul's performance. Even Clive Davis, a major music executive, called it an all-time great record. However, Davis also said he didn't agree with releasing it as a single. Paul admitted that during a difficult period in his life, he abandoned the song and its message. Looking back, he felt he let the song down, but he also believed the song deserves another chance to be appreciated for what it truly was, a bold statement about identity and pride. Even though Am I Black Enough for You didn't perform as well as Me and Mrs. Jones, Billy Paul's album, 360 Degrees of Billy Paul, still did well. It reached number 1. Number 1 on the Billboard Soul chart and number 17 on the pop chart. The song may not have been a hit at the time, but today many people recognize its importance. It showed that Billy Paul wasn't afraid to stand up for what he believed in, even if it cost him popularity.
Though it may be quite simple, but that's how it does.
In 2000, Billy Paul had a big problem with Nike. The company used his song in a commercial without asking him first. The commercial aired during the 2000 Summer Olympics. It featured Marion Jones, a track and field star who was very famous at the time. She was part of Team USA and won 5 medals in the Olympics. Later, these medals were taken away because she was caught cheating. The Nike ad, called Mrs. Jones, showed Marion as a DJ talking about important issues like education and fair pay for female athletes. While Marion Jones was speaking, Billy Paul's song Me and Mrs. Jones was playing in the background.
Mrs. Jones.
When Billy Paul saw the commercial, he was shocked and angry. He hadn't given anyone permission to use his song. Billy reached out to a lawyer and they decided to sue Nike and Whedon and Kennedy. He said the company had cheated him by not asking for his permission and not paying him. He believed they owed him $1 million in licensing fees, which is the money artists earn when their work is used in ads or other projects. A spokesperson for Whedon and Kennedy admitted that they made a mistake. They called the decision to use Billy Paul's song without permission a very stupid mistake. But even though they admitted it was wrong, the damage had already been done. On the heels of the Nike suit, Paul targeted his former record company for unpaid royalties on his signature song. He claimed that he had not received an accounting statement from Philadelphia International Records in 27 years and sued Assorted Music, its owners Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff, and Sony Music Entertainment for nearly $500,000. At the 2003 trial in a federal district court, the attorney for Assorted Music argued that Paul was only owed about $27,000, explaining that while the company had mistakenly failed to collect proper foreign royalties on the record, Paul actually owed the company about $314,000 for the costs of recording and producing the 10 albums he made for Philadelphia International from 1971 to 1980. In the end, the jury deliberated for less than an hour and found that Paul did not owe the company anything. Instead, they awarded him $500,000 in unpaid royalties for his recording of Me and Mrs. Jones.
We got a thing.
Paul said through a statement issued by his attorney, "I'm so glad my path to justice has finally come to an end. I've been waiting years to be paid for my recordings." Seymour Strauss, who testified at trial on Paul's behalf, commented, "There is no question that Billy Paul's royalties had been improperly calculated for many years." Jay Berger of the Artists' Rights Enforcement Corporation said, "This case firmly establishes the rights of singers signed to small production companies to receive 50% of the money earned by the major labels that distribute the records." Chuck Rubin, the president of Artists' Rights, said, "The producers will no longer walk off with any of the artists' royalties." Paul's lawyer, Stephen Ames Brown, commented, "It was a stunning victory for Billy. The jury awarded him $12,000 more than we requested. The years of deception and excuses are over, and Billy Paul will from now on enjoy the fruits of his talents. Los Angeles juries have no patience for deadbeat record companies." Brown added, "And Billy Paul was Kenny Gamble's best friend. Can you imagine what might have happened to the others?" Billy also had a long and challenging life with his wife, Blanche Williams. Blanche was not only his wife, but also his manager. Together, they faced some tough times, especially when both struggled with drug addiction, including cocaine. These struggles deeply affected their lives and careers. Billy won a Grammy in 1972 for the powerful ballad Me and Mrs. Jones, and had then virtually disappeared from the charts, apparently a victim of poor song selection on the part of Gamble and Huff. Everyone, when asked about Billy Paul, had responded similarly, shaking their heads and muttering, "That coke will get you every time." But none of the people who had talked about Paul had seen him in years.
And the winner is Me and Mrs. Jones by Billy Paul.
In a touching moment, Billy once said something that even surprised Blanche. Talking about his song, he admitted, "I feel as though I let the song down when I went into my darkness." This darkness was the time he spent battling addiction. He felt he had abandoned the song and its meaning during those years. Billy Paul's album, When Love Is New, came out in December 1975. It had a style similar to his earlier work, mixing soul and love themes. Two singles stood out from the album. One was Let's Make a Baby, a song that talked about love and bringing a new life into the world. It reached number 1, 83 on the pop singles chart, number 18 on the soul chart, and number 30 in the UK. The other single, People Power, made it to number 82 on the soul chart and number 14 on the US dance chart. However, Let's Make a Baby stirred up a lot of controversy. Some people felt the lyrics were too explicit or inappropriate, especially for radio audiences. Jesse Jackson and his organization, Operation PUSH, led a campaign against the song. Jackson argued that the lyrics sent a negative message, especially to young listeners. Some radio stations made their own decisions about how to handle the song. For example, WWRL, a popular R&B station in New York, chose to play the song but avoided announcing its title. Other stations went as far as changing the lyrics. Many black radio DJs criticized Jesse Jackson's campaign, calling it a publicity stunt. They pointed out that Jackson wasn't critical of other suggestive songs like Roberta Flack's Jesse or the Brothers Johnson's Get the Funk Out of My Face. They felt Jackson was targeting Billy Paul unfairly. Jesse Jackson defended his actions, saying the campaign wasn't against Billy Paul personally. He argued it was about addressing a trend of explicit lyrics that he felt were inappropriate. Jackson insisted that the changes to Billy Paul's song were made independently by radio stations, not because of direct pressure from his organization. Despite the backlash, Billy Paul continued making music. His next album, Let 'Em In, was released in late 1976 and sparked more discussion. The title track was a funky soul remake of Paul McCartney's hit song, but Billy Paul gave it a unique twist. While McCartney's version was light and personal, Paul turned it into a civil rights anthem. He mentioned leaders like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., John F. Kennedy, and Medgar Evers. Paul also added powerful excerpts from speeches by Malcolm X and King.
We can't forget John.
But something strange happened with it. A Chicago radio station decided to change the song without asking him. They cut out part of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech in the song and replaced it with a speech by Jesse Jackson. This upset Billy Paul a lot. He said it was the shock of my life when he found out. A newspaper writer called the station's move ridiculous and said they ruined the song just to please Jesse Jackson. Even though this caused trouble, Billy Paul's song still touched many hearts. On May 23, 1977, Chicago celebrated Billy Paul Day. Reverend George Clements, a pastor from the South Side, gave Paul an award for the song. At the ceremony, a school choir performed Let 'Em In, and Paul was so moved that he cried tears of joy. Reverend Clements said the song gave hope in hard times. He praised Paul for sharing a powerful message about keeping the dreams of people like Dr. King alive. Let 'Em In became Paul's first album in years to hit the top 100 charts. It reached number 1, 88 on the pop charts and number 27 on the soul charts. Some singles from the album also did well. Paul's version of Elton John's Your Song even made it to number 1, 38 in the UK. Billy ended his time with Philadelphia International Records with some ups and downs. His final studio album for the label was First Class, released in 1979. This was a special album for Paul, but it didn't make it onto the pop or soul charts, which was surprising since his music usually did well. The album's first single, Bring the Family Back, didn't chart either. However, a disco version of the song made it to number 90 on the soul chart and number 51 on the dance chart. Another song from the album, False Faces, was also released as both a single and a disco track, but neither version gained much attention. By the 1980s, Paul's time at Philadelphia International officially ended with the release of Best of Billy Paul. This was a double album that included 4 songs no one had heard before. You're My Sweetness, Next to Nature, What Are We Going to Do Now That He's Back, and My Old Flame. The UK version of the album was called Billy Paul's Greatest Hits. It had a different track list and only included one of the new songs, You're My Sweetness, which reached number 1, 69 on the Soul chart.
Never gonna hurt you, baby, you're my sweetness.
Paul's last single for the label was a song called Jesus Boy, You Only Look Like a Man. It was a re-release from his earlier album Going East, but sadly it didn't chart. Over the years, many best of collections of Billy Paul's music have been released. However, some critics say these albums didn't always do justice to his talent. One reviewer, Andrew Hamilton, said that focusing only on Paul's singles left out some of his best work from albums. He believed that a mix of singles and album tracks was needed to show how great Paul's music truly was. Another critic, Jason Ankeny, praised a 1999 collection called Me and Mrs. Jones, Best of Billy Paul, for doing a better job. He said it highlighted Paul's range and included R&B hits that reminded fans of his brilliance. Billy Paul spent 9 years with Philadelphia International, and while he achieved success, many believe he deserved more recognition. Critics agree that with better choices for singles, Paul's career could have reached even greater heights. In 1989, Paul announced on stage in London that he was retiring. But like many artists, he couldn't stay away from the spotlight. By 2009, when someone asked him about his retirement, he laughed and said, "Retired? Are you serious?" Even after his so-called retirement, Billy kept performing around the world. He played in small clubs, hotel ballrooms, Las Vegas, and jazz festivals. He even performed in places like Paris and Brazil, where his famous song, Me and Mrs. Jones, was loved by everyone. Billy said he felt at home wherever he performed, but admitted that playing in his hometown, Philadelphia, was extra special. In 2000, Billy released a live album, Live World Tour 1999 to 2000, on his own label. It included songs recorded in places like Brazil, Paris, and Philadelphia. 2 years later, he released another live album, Your Songs Live in Paris, recorded at a private event in France. These albums showed how versatile he was, performing his own hits and covers of songs from different genres, like jazz, soul, and pop. Billy often said he worked hard to create his own unique sound. He was proud when people called him a legend, even though he thought the word was used too often. Even in his later years, Billy's concerts were exciting and filled with energy. He performed classics like Ebony Woman, Thanks for Saving My Life, and of course, Me and Mrs. Jones. His love for music kept him going, proving that retirement wasn't really in his plans after all. Billy Paul may have announced retirement once, but his passion for music kept him on stage, entertaining fans everywhere.
You often hear Stevie and Marvin as forefront of the movement, and nothing against those brothers, but Billy Paul, in every aspect of his presentation, is really the first person to bring reality.
The movie called Am I Black Enough for You was released. This biographical feature film was directed by Göran Hugo Olsen, a filmmaker from Sweden. The movie focused on Billy Paul. The film took inspiration from a similar project called Let's Get Lost. The film shows him as an interesting, open, and relatable person. He shares stories about his life, including the struggles he faced with racial prejudice and his journey through music. When asked why he agreed to make the movie, Billy Paul said he wanted to open up about his life, the good times and the bad. He explained, "I'm not getting any younger, and I wanted to share things that were hidden. This film allowed me to tell my story and release some of my emotions." The filming process was very personal. Billy mentioned that the crew followed him around the world and made him feel comfortable. "It felt like the camera wasn't even there," he said. "I trusted them, and trust is important in life. Making this movie brought me peace because it helped me deal with some of my inner struggles." The film became popular in Sweden and received positive reviews. A magazine called Uncut gave it 3 stars, describing it as heartfelt and engaging. Billy Paul didn't stop contributing to music after the film. In 2011, he teamed up with French singer Chimène Badi to record the song Ain't No Mountain High Enough. That same year, his old record label, Philadelphia International Records, PIR, celebrated its 40th anniversary by re-releasing some of Billy's albums. These updated versions included bonus tracks and interviews. Another special album came out in the US, featuring a live performance of Billy Paul and other artists in 1973. This album showcased Billy's iconic performances, including an extended version of Me and Mrs. Jones.
Mrs. Jones.
Throughout his career, Billy Paul received many awards and honors. He won a Grammy for Me and Mrs. Jones, as well as several other prestigious awards like the NCAACP Image Award and the American Music Award. In 2015, he was honored with the Sandy Hosey Lifetime Achievement Award, recognizing his lasting impact on music. Billy Paul's music and message went beyond entertainment. Questlove, a member of the band The Roots, compared him to legends like Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder. He praised Billy for creating music that spoke about social issues in the civil rights movement.
The winner is Me and Mrs. Jones by Billy Paul.
Sadly, in 2016, the world lost a musical legend. Billy was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and passed away on April 24, 2016, at the age of 81. His death was confirmed by his manager, Beverly Gay. She shared the sad news with NBC 10, saying that Paul had been hospitalized the week before at Temple University Hospital. He passed away in his home in Blackwood, New Jersey, surrounded by loved ones. A message posted on Billy Paul's website confirmed his passing. It read, "We regret to announce with a heavy heart that Billy has passed away today at home after a serious medical condition. We extend our most sincere condolences to his wife Blanche and family for their loss." The message also asked fans to share their memories and stories of Billy as they remembered this great artist. Billy Paul's death deeply affected the music community. One of the most heartfelt tributes came from Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff, the legendary music producers who helped launch his career. They released a statement on Sunday night saying, "We are very saddened to learn of the sudden death of our good friend and Philadelphia International Records recording artist Billy Paul." They went on to explain how they first saw Billy perform live and knew right away that they had discovered something special. His voice, a mix of jazz, R&B, and soul, was one of a kind. His voice was truly unique, and his music will always be remembered.